Hey, what's going on, everybody? Not your average Josh back here for another video. And today I am reviewing What If Season 3, the Disney Plus Marvel TV show that is coming to an end with this season. But before I get into my review of this, I do want to say, as I say at the beginning of every video, I appreciate anyone who's watching this. This is my hobby and passion, as I say every time. It's still a small channel here. Don't make any money from this. I just love talking about movies, TV shows, anything like that. So if you want to support this channel, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like down below, and also leave a comment. What is your thoughts on What If, the Marvel shows on Disney Plus as a whole? Any of your thoughts, you can leave it down below. And also, if you want to follow me on any of my social media platforms, they're on the screen right now as well. But let me go ahead and get into my main thoughts on this season 3 of What If. Now, for me, this whole series from the beginning, season 1, has been a little bit hit or miss overall. I think there's definitely been a issue with the quality and the consistency of the episodes. I thought season 1 overall was pretty weak in terms of the consistency. I thought it had standout moments, like the Doctor Strange episode might still be the best What If episode of these 3 seasons. And I thought the way season 1 ended with the finale with Ultron, I thought was really, really well done. Definitely felt out of nowhere though. Like they were not leading up to anything in particular, and all of a sudden this shit was just going down. So I thought those were the 2 bright moments, but still just had its inconsistencies throughout that first season. When it comes to season 2, I did think that that was the better season overall compared to season 1, and more consistently well done. I thought it set up everything leading up to the finale much better. But my issue with season 2 was the finale just was a little bit more disappointing than the first season. The first season I thought really hit well with that finale, and then the second season it's just like, okay, I see what they're doing here, but I'm not as into what they're going for. And so there's a little still bit of a mixed bag overall. While I still think season 2, I think actually, go ahead and give it out now, I think season 2 is the best season. But getting into this season 3, I was really hoping they would end strong. I was a little bit confused, and I'm still a little bit baffled that they're actually just ending this show. Like, out of all the shows they've done on Disney Plus, I think this is one where you just continue to improve upon, and they still had not really hit their peak with this. I think if you really access the full potential of what this show could be, it could really be something great. And I think there's literally just infinite ideas you can come up with this show to make great stories. And so I'm just a little confused why they ended with it. I don't know if it's just the budget of it, and with just being on streaming, if it's just not the cost of it just doesn't make sense. I don't know, but it just seems a little bit weird that they're ending after season 3. So I was just hoping they would end on a good note, that it would be something that I could hopefully have satisfaction in, and that, okay, maybe there were some bumpy moments throughout this, but they ended really well. And unfortunately, that is not how this ended for me. But since this is more of like an anthology type of show in a way, even though it does connect and has a through line pretty much through all 3 of these seasons, I'm going to talk about each episode individually and then give my score overall of what I thought of the season. Starting with episode 1, and that is What If the Hulk Fought the Mech Avengers. And I thought this was a pretty good start to the season. I think the cool idea here, this Gamma War, not so familiar with it. I have very limited knowledge of the comics, so I don't really know about this whole event that takes place. And it was really cool to see it all go down. I thought having more of the newer Avengers, what it seems like the MCU and what they were trying to lead towards, having Anthony Mackie here be legitimately Captain America, Monica Rambeau, have Sebastian Stan be here. You have Shang-Chi, Moon Knight, Red Guardian here. A lot of the people that I think they wanted to have that more of the forefront that just didn't quite all coalesce in the right way, I think, throughout this phase 4 and now into phase 5 that we're in with the MCU. But I thought it was really cool to see the whole team up there. My issues with this episode, though, were, I thought, my issue with a lot of episodes with What If is that they just really rush things, and they go through this whole first part of the Gamma War, and you go like 10 years later in like the matter of 5 minutes in this opening. And it was really cool what they were doing with some of the animation styles and everything, but it just really felt like you could not really have any emotional attachment to any of the characters. And that is the biggest problem, or one of the biggest problems with this season 3 as a whole. Like, pretty much every episode is just hard to have emotional attachment to the characters, because we're just moving so quickly through events, and these are universes we're not used to yet, and these characters are all different in their own way because it's a different universe. So it's just, there was really no emotional attachment. And especially with this first episode, I'm just kind of watching things go down. I'm like, okay, this is really cool. This is really fun. But anytime they tried to have little quippy, funny moments or any emotional moments with like individual characters, it just didn't quite hit like it could have if you had been able to spend more time on these individual stories instead of them all being 30 minutes and not feeling like you're fleshing out the writing enough. They're more focused on the action at times or just the visuals, and they don't put enough effort, I feel, at times into really making really well-written dialogue that is going to flesh out the moment and the character. And I think that's very apparent here in this. I do think I like the moments with Anthony Mackie, with him and Mark Ruffalo's character, of course, Bruce Banner. Them having more like therapeutic moments, a little bit of callback to Falcon and Winter Soldier. I thought some of that did work, and I saw what they were going for there. But there was also just some moments that were a little bit illogical once you get to the end of this episode, where like they're just asking you to accept shit. Like this whole big, basically, nuke goes off, and you're supposed to assume that the Hulk absorbed it all, but it still goes off in such a way where you're like, I'm pretty sure it's like right outside New York, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure all these motherfuckers are going to be dead for this due to radiation poisoning or something. Like it was just, yeah, that in there, and there's just certain moments where you're like, okay, it's a comic book property, so like, you're not meant to think too deeply about certain things, but there are just some moments where you're like, okay, like, is that really that plausible? But I thought it was really cool to see this kind of Power Ranger Attack on Titan with these mech suits. Thought that was really awesome to see. And so I really did enjoy the opening of this first episode. I thought it was a nice way to start the season, and definitely had me feeling a little more promising about what this season was going to be. But getting into episode 2, you have What If Agatha Went to Hollywood? Now, this episode is a little bit tough for me. Definitely on the lower end of this season for me. I enjoy Agatha the character. I really liked Agatha all along the show. I thought that was really a delightful, pleasant show. Seeing her pop up in here, Catherine Hahn still voicing her, I thought the way they brought most of the voice cast back in each episode in this season, I thought was really cool, really nice, to build that continuity there and to try to add to more of that familiarity, which I think ends up being kind of a knock on the show even more because there's so much times where you don't feel that emotional connection with any of the characters because they feels like they're trying to rush through so much of this shit. But you get that a little bit with this episode as well, where like within the first 5 minutes of this episode, there is so much shit going on. For me personally, it was like just too overstimulating, and like you have Agatha and then Kingo from the Eternals. They really try to bring the Eternals in here in like a couple episodes here to try and put more emphasis on them, or like the Eternals do matter, like really trying to show the audience that or something. Or maybe they just wanted to go into a more creative way with the Eternals. I don't know. But you bring Kingo in here, played by Kumail Nanjiani, of course, from the Eternals movie, playing that character. And for me, I'm one that I didn't really give that much of a fuck about the Eternals movie. I thought it was kind of but at the end of the day, didn't really care much about it. Pretty forgettable. And so Kingo being in here, like, Kumail Nanjiani plays a nice, funny character here, but there's just so much going on. This like idea that Agatha is trying to take from the celestial that's in the earth, and then they're quickly just moving along very fast here. They're like having this fight, but it's supposed to be this scene. Like, I really do enjoy how they're playing into the whole movie industry and Hollywood and these little inside jokes they make. Like, they're all pretty funny and have their nice little moments, but I just didn't quite connect with it overall when you're combining that with the actual real intense element that's going on in the show, when you eventually have Arishem coming to fight Agatha after she gets the power from the celestial that's in the earth. There's just a lot of stuff going on in this show, or in this episode, that I just didn't quite vibe with overall. I thought there was a little too much going on. I appreciate what they were going for, but for me, it just was one of those that it was a little bit more forgettable, and I don't know, like some of the jokes they even went for just didn't quite work for me as the episode went along, and what they ended up doing with it was fun. I saw what they were going for, but it just didn't quite hit me in a way, and I think that's really just all this episode comes down to. I don't think it was a horrible idea or anything. I just think for me personally, it just didn't quite hit like I think they wanted it to. Not really anything too egregious with this episode. It's just, it tries to rush into things so much where it's like you're either going to be on board with the crazy and chaotic nature of this, or you're just going to be completely like trying not to check out. And that was more where I was at with this. So that is that one. And episode 3 is for me, one of the best of this season, and it is What If the Red Guardian Stopped the Winter Soldier. This one I really enjoyed, and it was one of the ones that stayed more to a simpler concept, and just basically, what if the Red Guardian stopped Bucky from killing Tony Stark's parents? And basically, the story just goes from there. Now you have a whole new story and different, this whole espionage spy mission, and you get this really buddy cop episode with the Red Guardian, a younger version of him, but still played by David Harbour. I really enjoyed that. The only way you can really do that is in animation to really truly get that without doing some stupid de-aging shit. I really enjoyed the chemistry he had with Sebastian Stan in this as Bucky, and to see them eventually have this nice bromance kind of going on. And I just thought it was a nice, simple concept, executed really well. The action in it was great. The Red Guardian was the perfect amount of over the top with the humor, mixed with like the straight man kind of quality of Sebastian Stan in this, or Bucky. And so I really enjoyed where it went. You end up having like the U.S. government coming after them along with the Russians, and you get this nice play with Lawrence Fishburne's character from the Ant-Man films of being Goliath and being able to suit up and actually get big and everything. A nice callback to that. And it was just really a nice, fun episode, and I thought it was more in line, a little bit better than the first episode for me, but more in line with that, and that was what I was hoping more of what this season would have been, but it ends up going in a little bit different directions. But I just really enjoyed this episode. I thought, obviously, just the main heartbeat of it is, of course, Sebastian Stan and David Harbour playing their characters, and this really great partnership bromance ends up happening. And it's just a fun episode. It's just really, really well done. The action in it, you get this little Thelma and Louise kind of moment. But episode 4 of What If this is the crazy one. This is one of the chaotic ones. What if Howard the Duck got hitched? This is definitely, I think, from what I've seen from these 3 seasons, the craziest episode they had on here. You literally start out with Howard the Duck and Darcy having a baby, and literally she gave birth to an egg, I guess, and that is literally the whole episode here. You have her this egg, and all of a sudden this is basically this kind of prophecy where this egg is this special being, and their kid is going to be somehow special down the line, and somehow this world event or whatever, this egg is special in some way. And so now you have pretty much everyone trying to vie for it and get it, and Nick Fury down to the Thanos, to all the people. You bring in all these like B-list villains from all the Marvel films from the beginning in this, and I just thought it was really fun. I loved how they committed to the chaos of it. I think it's Darcy and Howard the Duck actually worked as a pairing more than I thought it would have. It's just a really fun kind of a concept, something that you've seen before plenty of times, where this MacGuffin that people are trying to get a hold of, whatever movie or TV show you're watching, whether it's emerald, gold, money, and someone's trying to get a hold of it, and you get this back and forth trying to grab. The whole last part of this episode is basically just one big chase sequence of trying to get a hold of this egg, and it's just a chaotic episode. Like, it's just funny. They play with the humor of Howard the Duck in here, and it just felt like this is the last season. They just wanted to go for it, and this one is not too far behind the first and third episodes of me. It's right there with those. At this point, like in these first 4 episodes, I've been enjoying the season pretty well so far. The second one being the one that's a little lower for me, but like I was enjoying this season up to this point pretty well. Like, I thought they just committed to the chaotic nature. Seeing Loki on Jotunheim, like, and being an actual big blue elf, like, it was pretty interesting to see that. Having Zeus pop up, just all different characters they use here. I thought this felt like a classic, just chaotic what if issue in a comic. And the way they committed to it, I thought, is what brought it home. Not necessarily a great episode, but it was a fun one. And yeah, so far, again, these first 4 episodes, like, besides the second one, at this point, I was enjoying this season pretty well. Like, it wasn't too far off from season 1 and 2. It was right there with those. But once you get to episode 5, it is What If the Emergence Destroyed the Earth? Now, this is another one that I thought was a really cool concept, and they executed it pretty well. One where you get a real shine on Riri Williams, you get White Vision back in here, and you also get a really great showing from Mysterio. I thought he was menacing as hell in here, more menacing than he was in Spider-Man Far From Home. And I really enjoyed the way Jake Gyllenhaal played Mysterio in that movie. But in this, you get a true, just like scary version of Mysterio, where he is taking control after the emergence that the Eternals couldn't stop, destroys the Earth, and he takes control, basically the leftovers. And it's really interesting to see all the different ideas they have in this, the different power sets of Riri Williams, and really trying to showcase Ironheart more. Of course, you can see they're trying to set it up because that show's going to be coming out on Disney Plus, so it makes sense why they would do it. And she's a pretty cool character. Like, I liked her in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I did think she was a little shoehorned in, especially in a movie that's so much about grief, and to have like a more fun character in there, I just felt a little bit off balance at times. But I really did enjoy her character still overall in that movie. And so seeing her in here, I'm pretty interested in the Ironheart show. Not the most excited or anything, but I'm interested to see where that goes. And so it was just cool seeing her in here. Having seen the few people that were survived, the heroes that we have left, it was just nice and interesting. And it does get pretty dark by the end of the episode too, where like there's this story where the Watcher even says at the beginning where she just fails every time. She gets to a certain point and she just constantly loses. Mysterio wins, or whoever's there wins, and she doesn't end up succeeding. And there was a sadness in it when you see certain imagery and when she feels like she's at the end of the line here. And I thought it was just a really good episode, really nice episode. But the thing here, though, this is where the season starts to take a bit of a turn for me overall. And you get the Watcher interfere in this episode. And this is where I'll get into it more as I'm talking about the rest of these episodes. There's no explanation for why the Watcher starts interfering randomly here. Like, he, in the next episode I'll talk about it, he also interferes. It just starts to not make sense of why. It just felt like, and I'll get into it more as we get into the finales and stuff, but it really just felt like this is the end of the series and they were trying to find some way to create an interesting, good finale, and they just came up with something, and there was like, yeah, people will just buy that the Watcher's just going to randomly do this. After all these years where he's just been watching, they don't give a good explanation for why he just randomly starts interfering here. And the explanations they try to give in like the last two episodes, which I'll get into, I just don't buy it. And so this is really where the season started to slowly go down more for me at the end of this, when I would have liked to see more of like a Riri Williams just try to actually have to get out of it, like find a way to get out and defeat the failure that she continues to be confronted with. But nonetheless, I still enjoyed this episode pretty well overall. And at this point, even with that last moment, I still really have enjoyed this season a pretty fair amount so far. And so episode 6 is What If 1872. And this was a fun episode as well. I thought Shang-Chi and Kate Bishop here being a pairing in the Old West, and having Shang-Chi on this path to try and find his sister, and then Kate Bishop trying to get revenge for her family being killed, I thought was a really nice pairing and good idea for both of their reasons to want to go on this mission and find the Hood here, a really compelling villain. My big issues with this episode were, and I still rated it right there with a lot of the other episodes so far in this season, but I do think they could have done more with the emotional depth, and that is something that continually throughout this whole What If series that they just have trouble with really getting down to the emotional depth they can get to. Like, you have Shang-Chi trying to avenge and get his sister. She's been kidnapped. She's been taken. Kate Bishop, her family's been killed. But you don't feel the real intensity of that. Like, there should be some type of true hardcore emotion with that. And you don't feel it really. Like, it's tough because it's just, you want to feel that emotion and it's just never really there. They're just kind of on the mission together. This episode's pretty fun. Like, the action is shot really well and the animation looks pretty damn good too. Like, the visuals and the action are pretty consistently well from the very first season or from the very first episode of season 1 of this show. But there's just times where it's like, I want to have more of that emotion, and it feels like because they have to rush at times and they have to get to point A and point B and point C in the plot, and the dialogue can suffer from that as well, where it's like, man, I wish we could just flesh out some of this stuff more. Like, they really showcased that very well in the Doctor Strange episode in season 1. I think that's why that's probably still the best episode, or one of the best of all of What If. Like, the way they're able to flesh out the character there, tell a whole story without feeling like you needed a whole movie. Like, there's some of these episodes where you're like, man, this could have really done even better. Even the one from this season, episode 3, the Red Guardian and the Winter Soldier stuff, like, that would have worked probably even better as a movie. But it worked well enough as an episode. But you only have 30 minutes. It's hard to really get that full connection with certain characters. And especially when you're doing something like this, when you got certain emotions behind the characters and why they're doing what they're doing, the motivations that they have. I just thought They could have done a lot better with that. And then with the Hood as well, he's a nice villain, but if you don't know anything about the Hood, there are some things in this that don't make sense. The reveals they have, if you haven't seen it, I won't necessarily spoil it, but uh, there's a reveal that relates to Shang-Chi where you're like, they don't explain how that is and why a certain character is doing what they're doing. And so if you don't know shit about the Hood, you might be a little bit confused in this, and they don't explain it enough. And if it was a longer episode or if it was more like a movie, you could flesh out the character more of the Hood and get more of an understanding of the power sets and why the character does what they do. But they don't go into that too much. But overall, I still had an enjoyable time with this, and it was still pretty on par with pretty much every other episode except episode 2 of this season so far. So at this point, again, still. And you also had a moment in here where the Watcher interferes again, randomly, doesn't explain why, he just all of a sudden is interfering. Like throughout these whole 3 seasons, he only interfered one time when Ultron came into his space and was fucking with him because he had to interfere. He had to bring in people at that point to try and help him. This is just random shit where he's just interfering, and it just doesn't make sense. Like there's no logical explanation for it, so it's just kind of frustrating. Like, well, what's the point of this? Like I thought he was just supposed to watch. Like, that was the whole main thing. And like, so if he's doing this, and then again we get into more further stuff when you get the higher ups, the higher up Watchers, the 3 main motherfuckers that come down. Now where I thought this show really in this season took a dive for me, unfortunately, and that is episode 7. What if the Watcher disappeared? Now, one thing I didn't mention, at the end of episode 6, you have the Watcher finally being basically captured and being potentially punished by these 3 main head Watchers. There was an Executioner and then 2 other names for these motherfuckers. I don't remember their names, but they're like the head Watchers. They capture this dude because he keeps interfering in shit randomly. Again, no explanation for it. And so episode 7 starts with basically you have them having the Watcher captured, Uatu, the main one that we've been following for the show. And you get Captain Carter show back up. You have Storm show up in here. They see like a shard of the part of the whatever you want to call it, the realm where they knocked the Watcher down in. So they somehow, it just randomly comes to where Captain Carter is, the Captain Carter that we've been following. She basically is like the main character of this show, which I have my thoughts on that as well. I don't mind Captain Carter. I like her, but I do think it's kind of weird how this show just really puts so much prominence on her character. Like, she's cool, but like, it just, some of these scenarios is like, why is she the main one that is the Watcher and that is like so like connected with? I don't quite get it. They really try to make her be like the main hero that is like involved with all this stuff, and it's just a little bit hard to buy at times. But either way, you randomly, the shard comes down, and where she's at, you have Captain Carter, Storm, and you have the daughter of Howard the Duck and Darcy, Birdie the Duck, and played by Natasha Lyonne, which I really like her. She's cool in anything she pops up in. She's really good. I think she really fits the voice here. But this was one where I thought the show was just trying to connect back to episode 4. And for me personally, I don't know if this was their thought process. Just for me, the way I took it was they didn't want to just have a chaotic episode. They wanted to have it connect. So then people that were complaining about it being so over the top chaotic, they could just say, oh, well, it connects to the finale of this season. So there was meaning behind it. It wasn't just chaotic. When one of the things I really enjoyed about the episode was the fact that it really just leaned into how crazy it was, and the concept of it was just so wild. And the fact that you make it now into this, oh, well, it's actually connected too because of the egg, she is special. And it makes sense, yeah. They had so much emphasis on the fact that this their baby is going to be some special down the line, something special. So I get it, but it just felt a little bit weird, like they're trying to connect it there. It just felt a little weird to have this random character now, Birdie the Duck. Overall, just felt a little weird. And then you also had randomly in here, Kahori brought in here from the 2nd season, this new brand new character that was original made for this What If series. And that one also just didn't make sense. Like, I get her connection with Captain Carter, but it was another one where I was like, oh, so she happens to just be here too. And the group here, I just didn't really connect with. Like, I didn't buy their chemistry at all. It felt very just like rushed. And these last 2 episodes, I think even more so, felt just the most rushed with the writing. Like, they needed to get to a certain point, and like shit was just happening so fast. The team up was already there. They found this shard. Now they're just in like a couple minutes of time. They're like, oh, let's go find Ultron from season 1. And to me, it just did not make sense. Like, why? personally, I thought they did such a good job in season one. One of my favorite parts, along with the Doctor Strange episode, was what they did with Ultron in the finale. And I just thought they didn't need to go back to him. Like, they could have had some other reason or way to end up this finale, but to go get Ultron, and the fact that they, like, without even thinking about it anymore, Captain Carter's like, oh, we gotta get Ultron. He can help us. It's so risky, though. They don't even think for like 5 or 10 more minutes to, like, is there any other way? Like, is there something else we can do to try and solve this without doing one of the most risky things we can do? Like, how do we know Ultron's not just going to take over and destroy everything anyway, including all the multiverse? It just felt a little like just rushed, and like, we have to get to this point. And then when they go find Ultron, he just so quickly, because he has this moment of self-reflection and he's destroyed his world, and he's like, I was looking for peace, but I didn't really find the peace that I was looking for. And so because of this little moment of the time of self-reflection he has, we're supposed to buy that he immediately is on board with their team and is like, yeah, I'll go ahead and help you guys. Once you get to the next episode, he makes another decision that just like, okay, we're supposed to accept that he's just, I guess, a good guy now, and like doesn't have any other motives, but just because he had this time of self-reflection. It just felt so like just not believable for what Ultron was, especially the way they had him be done in the first season. I don't know. Just for me, it just did not work for me much overall. Again, in this episode, the action and the visuals were really well done, like it is pretty much in every episode of What If. But I just had no emotional attachment. I did not care about this team. I did not feel like it was very well put together. Like, you had Storm, and it was really cool. Like, it was awesome to see Storm in this. You get the little X-Men animated series, and you get another little X-Men animated series Q as well later on in the episode. And it was really fun to see her also have like the Asgardian powers as well. Like, it was just really cool. Some really awesome action moments, some really interesting visuals to look at. But I just was not connected to this team. Like Captain Carter and Storm, and then Birdie the Duck, and then the Kahori, which I really enjoyed her character. I liked the story they told in season 2. That was one of my favorite episodes of that season. But it didn't make sense, like why, like the meshing of the team just didn't make sense, even like with their powers and everything. So I just wasn't connected with them emotionally, and they would try to give these little funny comedic lines that feels like lines that would only make sense for characters, or hit more with an audience for characters that we've been following for a longer period of time. Again, a thing this show just struggles with is connecting you with characters in a short period of time while also being in the moment with the story. I think this show just has a tough time with the writing when it comes to all that. But with that, we'll go ahead and get into episode 8, which is What If. And I like this one more than episode 7, but this was also a pretty disappointing, basically a part 2 leading right off from the last episode. The series finale and season finale of this show, I just thought it just did not stick the landing for me much at all. Again, in this episode, I just did not feel emotionally connected to our main 4 protagonists that we're following here. And then right at the beginning of the episode, you have Ultron, as I was talking about in the last episode, sacrificing himself for this team. And it's just like he barely just met these people. I get the whole self-reflection thing, but it just did not make any sense. It did not feel like in Ultron's character, especially this Ultron who has all the stones and all this power, to just give up, to just sacrifice himself. And that's the last we see of him. It's just so random. And then another big issue I had in this episode was this huge battle that happens on this planet in the middle of who knows where. And you basically have the Watcher and our 4 main girls here in the biggest trouble ever. They're about to get taken out by the 3 main head Watcher motherfuckers. And they basically feel like they just came up with something in the writing room, like this very convenient thing of just the Watcher basically saying words and then them all repeating it after him. And that's how they get his powers. It just made no sense. It took all the specialty, the novelty out of the Watcher's powers. Like, they start at the beginning of this episode, or near the beginning, they have this whole kind of scene in the past where you see the Watcher as he given the powers and able to observe everything. And it all feels very mystical and mysterious and special. But then when you have this moment where they're about to die and the Watcher just says, hey, repeat these couple lines that I say, and then you guys will have the powers. And it just quickly like that. All they do is have to say these lines and they get the Watcher's powers. It just took all the special nature of what the Watcher's powers seemed to be, and it just made it feel just like normal and just like, okay, so that's really all he had to do. It's just so convenient, and like they needed to get to a point where our characters can fight against these guys and we can have this whole last battle. It just felt so rushed and just so haphazard, just like put this shit together like so quickly. We don't know how else we can get to this finale. That was so much of these last 2 episodes. And where just some of my frustration with this show and how it ended was, and I'm just so disappointed, like, especially with how this season was going, like, it was still doing pretty good for me. Like, as I was mentioning in the lead ups to this, like, episode 1 through 6, only really episode 2 was a real true, like, weaker episode. But then once you get to these last 2, it's just like, man, they just dropped the ball on a level where I was already, again, not emotionally connected to these characters. And then when you have unexplainable stuff, for me personally, like the Ultron thing and them just somehow getting the Watcher's powers just randomly quickly like that, like they don't have any skill they had to learn. They don't have any extra knowledge they have to have in their head. It's all just, yep, they're just able to bring this power in. So it was like, why the fuck didn't you do that before with Ultron in season 1? Like, it was just, you didn't want to go there. Like, it just didn't quite make sense for me. And then you get, look, some really cool action. That's why I think this episode is better than episode 7 for me, because there are some really awesome visuals and some really cool action that goes down here. You get some like Dragon Ball Z kind of stuff going on where they're just all fighting across this planet in space. And it was really cool. Like that stuff, just on an entertainment level, I was more engaged with that. But because I was still, again, not emotionally connected that much, I did find myself trying to check out just randomly, naturally just checking out a couple times, even when the action was going on, because, yeah, you got a lot of beautiful stuff going on, but if I'm not emotionally connected at all, it still just kind of feels just a little bit empty by the end of it. And that's really where this ends up going down. Like, you have a bunch of stuff happen with this whole fight go down, and then by the end of it, you basically have the resolution that just kind of felt like, okay, that was cool. They ended it the way they wanted to, I guess. But for me, it just was disappointing. And I just didn't connect, especially with those last 2 episodes at all. And I just really wish they had stuck the landing a little bit more than they did. Like, we didn't need to go back to the Ultron well. We already did that in season 1. You could have been more creative with the writing, not feel like we were rushing stuff so much, and actually come up with more legitimate reasons for why they were able to defeat the head Watcher motherfuckers. That is pretty much my main thoughts once it gets to the end here. I just really more disappointed with the season overall. But because the first 6 episodes, I say episode 1 and then episode 3 through 6 were a little bit better for me, a little bit more consistently, just good quality. This season was a little bit higher than it probably could have been, but overall, the way I do it, I rate every episode after I watch it, and then at the end of it, I add it all up and then do an average of what the score for this season is. And for me, this season 3 of What If is a 6.4 out of 10. Definitely not a horrible score, and if you're looking at that, you might be like, oh, okay, that's a pretty decent season of television. And yeah, overall, I guess it is. It's just when you end so disappointing, it's just tough, because it's to me right there with 1 now of like, I think season 3 actually might be the weakest season overall, because season 1 ends really strong for me, and then it has such, like, maybe the best episode of these 3 seasons with the Doctor Strange episode. Season 3, you don't have an episode like Doctor Strange 1 in season 1. You don't have a great finale. It's the most disappointing finale, I think, for me, of the 3 seasons. And you don't necessarily have, like I said, the highs of season 1 and not the consistency of season 2. And so for me, I think this is the weaker season of the 3, and that's very disappointing when this is the series finale and it felt like they were leading up to this. And it all just felt so abrupt. Like, compared to season 2, every episode kind of just felt random throughout this season, and that's fine. But then when you get to episode 6, at the end of episode 6 into 7, it just all feels so like out of nowhere, this new conflict of, like I said, the Watcher just randomly started just interfering, and there's no explanation for it. And the fact that they even mentioned, like, he's been doing this, I guess, a bunch of times before. And it's like, so why weren't you guys stopping him before? Like, why now are you guys stopping him? Like, there's just so much logical stuff in these last 2 episodes where you're like, okay, so why was this that way? Like, what? It just makes me feel like that they maybe could have done a better season if it wasn't going to be the last one. Maybe they had other ideas for what the finale or what this season was going to be like. But since it was confirmed to be the last one, they just were like, okay, let's just try and put something together here. And it just felt like they just rushed it and just were really just trying to quickly get to certain plot points and not focus too hard on the emotional character growth. And that's really disappointing, because that's where some of the best stuff can come. I mean, look at X-Men 97 that came out earlier this year. that had about the same amount of runtime on some of the episodes, and yet it still had such great and just very deep character growth and exploration into different emotions with the characters, and you're dealing with so many different characters in that. So it's tough, and I get that one is more linear. You're not like jumping around different stories like What If, but it's just tough when you go from that and then you see this at the end of the year, and it's just like, man, I just felt like they dropped the ball pretty hard here. Not the worst. It's not horrible last two episodes. It's just because I have no emotional connection. That's what so much of it is what brings it down. But then some of the other little stuff, it just adds to that more just negative feeling about the last two episodes. But as my main thoughts on this season, what did you guys think? Are you even watching What If? Have you fallen off on it? Are you a big fan of What If? What did you think? Did you watch this season? Leave the comments down below. Also, if you want to support this channel, hit the subscribe button and the like button as well. And you can also follow me on my social media platforms that is on this screen right now. Pretty soon coming up, you're going to have The Wolfman coming out and a couple other January films that I'll be interested to check out. But that is it for now. I appreciate anybody who's watching this, as I always say, and I will talk to you guys later.